Welcome back, everybody. I'm Jason Thibodeau, your host with the Morrell Mortgage Podcast. I'm out of Huntington Beach, branch manager for JMJ Financial. I've also got with me my co-host, as usual, Matt Morrell. He's the branch manager of the Idaho JMJ Financial. So we're mortgage guys, commission only, and our clients are real estate agents as far as like the referral partner piece of this goes. We help people buy homes. And it's been kind of a desire of ours to make an episode that helps people understand what it looks like as a commission-only salesperson to eventually find success. Because I'm sure plenty of people who are in this arena can relate. It's hard to make money right away. And what does the path look like? And what kind of adversity does somebody face, and what does somebody need to do on a consistent basis to eventually get to a place where they're successful? And I think the great case study of that is Matt Morrell, my co-host. He's been in the mortgage industry since I think it's 2015. Is that when you started, Matt?
Yep, January of 2015.
Yeah, and Matt and I had met through some networking efforts. He had been in the finance world for quite a while before then and decided he wanted to give mortgage a try. And of course, he's never looked back, and things have gone really well outside of the fact that, we've seen some pretty massive volatility and cycles in this industry. Matt has kind of been the poster child for somebody who's just stayed steady and found a lot of success. So the point of this interview is for me to interview him and kind of showcase what it is his story was and how he got to this place. So Matt, with that, can you just give us an understanding of, when you started, what was it that you did in that first year that kind of got some traction going for you? Because I look, in the first year of being a salesperson in a new industry, it's hard to get the momentum going. And is there anything that you can point to in that first year that really started to build that momentum?
Yeah, I would sum it up by saying that the number one thing that led to some success quickly was not being in the office. And really what that summarizes for me is prospecting.
Yeah.
So I was, if you remember, I was probably in the office early. I attempted to get there before you and Steve, Steve being another mentor of mine when I first got in the business alongside you, Jason. And my goal was to be the last to leave. But in between, my goal was to not be in the office. It was to be out prospecting. So what that looked like was, BNI, Business Network International, I believe is what it stands for. That's where I met you, Jason, right?
Yeah.
Lunches, coffee meetings, anything that I could participate in, just random networking events that I would Google. And then when I was at the office, it was cold calling, emailing, it was prospecting. I spent very little time early on actually doing loans. And I think that's probably typical for anybody in a commission sales role. Odds are that first year and really 2 years is going to be very little doing the business and a lot building the business and attempting to get the phone to start ringing, if you will.
Yeah. And I think that you just highlighted one of the most important pieces. It's dealing with the aspect of not actually seeing the money at the end of the day for a year or two. And this is that barrier to entry in our industry. It's really easy in our industry to get an NMLS license to quote unquote be eligible or licensed to originate, but it's a whole nother thing to actually get to the end of the rainbow and find the pot of gold, so to speak. So, and that's what I want to address, right? Like in year one and year two, you're doing all the activity. Was there anything in particular that kept your head in the right space? Were there any moments of doubt? And if so, what was it that you did to kind of overcome that? Or were you just keeping your head down and not paying attention to the negative self-talk?
Yeah, more the latter. I mean, I'm sure I had moments of self-doubt. I'm pretty lucky from a young age. It was instilled in me that I could do anything that I put my mind to.
Yeah.
And so I've always had this natural confidence that things would just work out if I put in the work. It also helped me to CJ you were a client of mine when I was a financial advisor prior to me coming alongside and working with you.
Yeah.
And part of you being a client of mine was I saw your financial picture at a very young age, and I saw the success that you had in this career. And, I grew up playing sports. I always occurred for myself as being very coachable.
Yeah.
Right. And able to follow a recipe and do it consistently day in and day out, regardless of the self-talk. And so I believe that the self-doubt crept in every now and then, but I had a natural tendency to just ignore that and just put my head down, because I saw firsthand the tangible results that would take place if I just followed what you were telling me to do.
Yeah.
Right. I knew that if I did X, the result would be Y. You were no different than I was at the end of the day. And we're all human beings. None of us are that different than each other. If we just do what the successful people are teaching us, it will lead to success if we can stay in it long enough. And I do think that's where people get in their own way, is the success doesn't happen quickly. And therefore, we have a tendency as human beings to give up quickly, or to not want to go through the pain.
Yeah, well said. I'm realizing as you're talking through that the big pointer in all of this is mentorship and who you surround yourself with. I will tell you that I had a similar experience with my mentor, Steve. And I will tell you for sure that if I had just gotten my license and hung it with some random shop and there wasn't really good leadership, and I wasn't really surrounding myself with somebody doing it at a high level, it wasn't going to happen for me. I mean, it's pretty confusing. Like if you're in your 20s or even early 30s and you're just getting started in a commission-only sales role, it's really tough to have it figured out. You don't really know what you're doing, so you need something to emulate. And I was fortunate enough, and you fell into a similar situation with Steve and I, just to But the thing is, for me, and I think that this is true for you too, I had to be really intentional in seeking out mentorship. It didn't just fall in my lap, right? I knew that I was confused personally when I was in my 20s, and at that time it was 2008 and the market was falling apart. I knew for sure it was like, look, I'm either going back to school to try to figure out my life, or I need to find mentorship. And what I will tell you, like my own personal story, like I had a bunch of people tell me to go pound sand when I was trying to find, like I was, on the internet trying to find the people who I knew were older than me and working for good companies and doing it at a high level. And 9 out of 10 of those people told me to pound sand. So I got rejected a lot, even before I could be in a position to try to sell something, just from a leadership and mentorship standpoint. And I remember when you sought me out and you asked me to go to lunch with you, you asked me to come work with me. It was really intentional. And I agree, because as much as we all want something, if we don't know what the heck we're doing, right? And, the action that we're taking is sort of barking up the wrong tree. You could be on a hamster wheel for 10 years and wasting your time.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. The biggest shortcut, if I were talking to a 25 to 30-year-old today, I think I was 27 or 28 when I got in the business. If I was talking to myself again, the biggest shortcut to quote unquote success in sales is seeking mentorship quickly. And because I'll give you an example. When out of college, I was a financial advisor with Smith Barney at first, then Morgan Stanley. And that is a commission only sales job also. You have a small salary for the first 2 years and then it's gone, right?
Yeah.
And they paired me with some people in the office. It was in Beverly Hills, and there were some really big producers in that office. And it was horrible. They threw me a phone book and said, hey, or some leads, and said, start calling. But there was no true mentorship other than pick up the phone and fall on your face until you find success. And it was more of a dog eat dog world in the, kind of picture like the stockbroker world. It was more of a dog eat dog world. And it wasn't everyone trying to help each other grow, if you will. And so one thing with me is I always felt a little lost and wasn't sure what I wanted to do. But the one thing I did do is I kept moving. Like if it wasn't financial advisor, then I went and sold life insurance. I didn't stick in something too long. And this could be good or bad. For me, it was a positive, because when I saw something wasn't working, I moved on to the next thing. And it's not that I didn't give it a chance. I was a financial advisor for 3 or 4 years, but I just, at certain point, it just clicked that wasn't what I was going to be good at. And so then I did reach out to you and asked for you to mentor me and to come work with you and Steve. And I'm so blessed that took place. 10 years later, here we are as business partners. But what really made you and Steve different, in my opinion, is you were willing to give without the expectation of anything in return.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you would give me loans, we would split them, and it's not like you were paying me, pennies to go help you work. Like, we collaborated. You were underwater. There's a refi boom, I think in 2016, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
You were drowning because you had been doing it for 10 years. So you were having massive success. And the timing worked out. You needed some help. I was trying to learn. And then I just went to work. I busted my butt every day to prove to you and Steve and to myself, that you guys made the right decision on me, and it was going to pay off. I mean, I was a grinder, man, to a fault,
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's a great point. You're touching on something that I think is super important. We're in a world of sales. And I think the version of sales in our society that gets put on a pedestal is always be closing, right? Hard sales, hard closing, ABC, Glengarry, Glen Ross, used car sales stuff. And I think that's like, for whatever reason, that's what people have in mind as far as what they need to do to be successful in sales. And I think that what didn't align for you, just reading between the lines back in your stockbroker days, is it's probably exactly what it was, right?
Man, you could not have summed it up better. If I had to summarize what I would do, I would never consider myself a salesperson. I don't feel like I've sold a day in my life.
Yeah.
What I really enjoy doing is I love people.
Mm-hmm.
I love relationships. They're meaningful to me. My first agent that I ever worked with, Penny McCann, if she's watching this, and I still work, I have a deal with her right now, 10 years later, right? It's a 10-year relationship. She literally sends my daughter gifts on her birthday every year.
Yeah.
Like, these are the types of relationships that I enjoy building, and they're deep, they're meaningful, they're long lasting. They're not surface level. I'm not selling. I'm just being me and connecting with human beings. And some people I don't connect with, and that's okay. And I don't need to connect with everybody. I'm sure there's people that don't care for my approach or my style or how I look or how I talk, but there's a lot of people that do, and there's enough to have a really meaningful career. And I think that would be another really great point to touch on at some point, is in most sales jobs, I shouldn't say any, but a lot of sales jobs, especially ours and real estate agents, you don't have to do a ton of volume to have success. 10 or 20 agents can really provide a pretty incredible career for us.
Yeah.
And so, I think that it's not always quantity. It's just the quality that matters more. And that's made me enjoy my career choice.
Yeah. Yeah. It's such an important point, because it takes the pressure off somebody to try to force things. You don't need to be a certain way. You don't need to press too hard. You don't need to force anything in sales. And I think that, unfortunately, more often than not, wherever people look, whether it's our industry or anyone else's, they're looking at a leader who's built their career on a house of cards, right? Which is maybe effective to a certain point. And look, if that's their style, and that's fine. I guess there's no real judgment in that. It's just not my style, or yours. And I like anybody listening to this in our industry, or they're a realtor or any commission-only salesperson, the message is, you don't have to be a goofball. You don't have to force things. You can just be yourself and show up with integrity and honesty and authenticity, and people are going to gravitate towards that. And it's one or two relationships that you need in the beginning to allow for things to start snowballing. You mentioned Penny McCann, an escrow you just opened yesterday. Guess what? I opened up an escrow with Team Sacken yesterday, and I've been working with them for 15 years.
Yeah, and I'll stop you there, Jay, because how long did you have to stay in front of Team Sakin before they became a loyal partnership?
Yeah, I mean, it was years. I mean, the funny thing is, they were a cold call when I was a youngster and had no idea what I was doing. But I was just getting my start with Steve, my original mentor, and I was taking action. I wasn't great at it. I wasn't polished. I was nervous. I was a human being, a young kid, but ultimately they saw something in me. They wanted somebody a little bit more younger, hungrier, and we were just whatever. We were in alignment. People, Steve used to say people are going to work with you because they like you. So when you start to get out of your own head, and I think the tendency in a lot of young salespeople is to just really cling to, oh, I need a flyer. I need bells and whistles. I need features. I need to be able to point to some magical product that is going to really allow me to show up prospecting in a way that makes me feel confident, like I'm not faking it. None of that's true. Just letting anybody listening to this know. And it's not like we want to fake it till we make it or anything like that. But the idea that you need to be some expert on or engineer level expert on product at the beginning of your sales career, show up with a fancy flyer. Dude, how many times have you and I shown up to a meeting or an open house prospecting to meet new realtors without even a business card?
Penny McCann, first open house I ever walked
That's right.
into.
That's
I
right.
didn't even have my business cards yet. First open house I ever went to was her open house. And I wouldn't want to, miss something in what you said and go over it. You said it took years to get Team Sakin. This business, the way that we do it, takes time. And I think that you can point to bells and whistles and perhaps close a deal or two quicker.
Mm,
And to me, it's going to be the odds are it's going to be a one time transaction. You may or may not get business from that person again in the future because there's no depth to the relationship. It's just like, hey, look what I've got. They happen to have one client that fit what you had.
yeah.
And so you got a sale out of it and it was a quick hit. And to me, in commission only sales jobs, people have a tendency to look for the quick hit.
Yeah.
And if you can get past that and you can have delayed gratification and you can invest in meaningful relationships over a 2, 3, 4 year period, you're going to have a much more stable, consistent, more meaningful business at the end of the day versus these quick hits from all these random people where you're just, in my opinion, likely doing a lot of juggling. And that would create a little bit of chaos in my world, and it works for some people. It just doesn't align with
Yeah,
how
it's
you
not
want the business.
sustainable for the long run. And I
Right.
got to mention this before I forget something you touched on earlier that I really want younger salespeople to hear. Uh, and just credit to you and to both of us, because I feel like we've embodied this in our careers. We don't stay in a situation that's out of alignment for us. We did some seeking um, after we left together, our first company where we met. It was time to make a move, and we took a shot. And we found out within about a year and change that the new platform wasn't for us, and we made a move. And so you're not always gonna take a shot and be successful, but I noticed a lot young loan officers, realtors stay in a situation that they know they're out of alignment with for years. They're wasting their life for years because they want to avoid conflict. They want to avoid the uncomfortable conversation. They know in their heart every day when they show up to this office that it's not who they are as a person. But it's very difficult as human beings to really say, you know what, this isn't working for me. I have to make the hard decision and move on. And yes, it is scary. And yes, I don't know if it's going to work. And like I said, our first shot after leaving our previous platform didn't work. The second shot obviously did. We've been in the second shot since 2018, late, and we've grown exponentially. And it's just like there's so much wasted time with young people not willing to say, yeah, this isn't working for me. I need to find a new situation.
Yeah, it's funny because what comes up for me on that is the opposite also. So I think as with anything in life, it's, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I struggle with the word balance. I haven't had great balance. So maybe balance is the wrong word. But what comes up for me or what occurs for me is you've got people who bounce around a million times also. Like you've got
Yeah.
the officer who goes to 8 companies in 4 years, always thinking that there's something better. The grass is always greener,
Yeah.
or an agent who's at 5 different brokerages in 5 years. And they're, in my opinion, they're blaming their current situation for their lack of success and thinking that the new location is going to create success.
Yeah.
And in reality, it's us. Like, yes, it has some impact out there, but in reality, our success is determined by us. If you put me at any company, I'm going to figure out how to be successful.
Yeah.
And there are companies that can help expedite that. I do believe that, and people. But it's funny. I think you get both ends of the spectrum. You get people who stay too long, and you get people who move too much.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I don't know where that fine line is, but at
Yeah.
the end
No,
of the
there's two
day,
sides of the spectrum. You're right. You're
yeah,
right. The
yep,
bouncing around aspect is certainly, there's a possibility for that to become problematic too.
yes,
There's loyalty in this in sales and consistency and sticking with one platform culture, creating your tribe. That's all important too. And then there's, like I said, then there's the blatantly obvious situation where you're just not happy.
yep,
You know what I mean? So you have to, as a salesperson, use your own intuition to figure out that, right? And when you're young, it's important to dabble and try, but also not to waste too much time, like you said, bouncing around, always looking for the shiny object. So
yep.
that's a great way to backstop what I said, right? Because you kind of have to find the middle ground between staying too long and then bouncing around too much. Well said.
Yeah, I agree. I wanted to touch on a quote that I heard just yesterday from Nick Saban, and I'm not going to get the quote exact, but the underlying message was, we know we all want to be great. We know what it takes to be great, but having the discipline day in and day out to do what needs to be done to be great is where most people fall short.
Yeah.
It is extremely hard to show up every day, regardless of how you feel, regardless of the things going on around you in your personal life, in your professional life, and do what needs to be done to have the level of success that you want to have. And success is only measured by yourself. I wouldn't get spun up comparing success to other people. Success might be 1 loan a month for some people. It might
Yeah.
be 10 loans a month for other people. That doesn't
Yeah.
matter. But knowing what you need to get to that goal and then showing up every day, day in and day out. And it's funny because you and I have done a lot of coaching over the past few years. And if I really sit down and I think to myself, how committed and how disciplined have I been versus what I'm capable of? I'm at like 50 or 60% of what
Yeah.
Matt's truly capable of if I wanted to do more. And I still think that 50 to 60% is greater than what a lot of people put in, but we're just capable of so much. And I think, I speak for myself, there's just a tendency to get distracted and procrastinate and put off what we know we need to do. Especially, you talked at the beginning about the cycle of a sales professional.
Mm.
This is an important piece also. We start out with no business and 100% of our time we're able to prospect. Well, inevitably, with all that prospecting comes business. And then more and more of our time is taken away from prospecting to work on the business that's coming in.
Yeah.
Inevitably, we close that business and then we're slow because we gave up the prospecting to work on the business.
Yeah.
And so a lot of salespeople get this like roller coaster ride because it's very challenging to, what I realized 5 to 10 years in is it's very challenging to stay committed in the prospecting while still maintaining your business. And
Mm.
that's really, I believe, the art of being able to scale that you and I are still working on to this day.
Yeah. Yeah. That goes to, what kind of platform are you on? What kind of team do you have? Who are you aligning yourself with? Because again, it is important that you're paying attention to those things, because if you're truly on your own, and the peaks and valleys to a certain extent are unavoidable in the very beginning stage of your career, because it's just, for lack of a better word, you're at an immature stage in your career, right? And there's only so much you can do. You're spinning all the plates. Eventually, as you mature in your career, you start to build out a team. Your CRM starts to get dialed in. Your automation starts to happen. And the peaks and valleys maybe never fully go away, but they certainly smooth out. But really good point. Yeah, this is good. I'm just trying to think if there's anything else we need to touch on. I guess it's like patience, it's one of those things where I didn't have my breakout year after I found my mentor until year 3. And it's not like I made zero money in year 1 or year 2, but like the patience factor in all of this, I think, is pretty darn critical. I don't know. Can you speak to that a little bit? Like, what was your trajectory? I don't fully remember, but I think that your trajectory was faster than mine, because I did, like I said, year 3 was my breakout year. What was your breakout year?
Yeah, I think year 2 was my breakout year, but I think you have to remember 2 things. Number one, I had been in a professional career for 5 years prior to getting into mortgage, and they were very much in alignment. I mean, financial advisor, mortgage professional have a lot in common. So number one, I was able to pick up the business, I believe, quicker than most, and I was able to speak the language quicker than most because I had a financial background, right? And so that certainly helped accelerate my success. In addition to that, I had an understanding of what it took due to my failure in the financial world. That's how I look at it, right? And so while I think my success may have happened a year earlier, in reality, I just had a little bit more experience in the professional world. You were what, 22 when you got into the business, I believe?
Yeah, 20.
Yeah, you were pretty young. So, that was your first professional career. So I had a little bit of a head start there. And then I also think aligning myself with you in what happened to be a decent market at the time certainly contributed to that as well. But 2 to 3 years is likely what it's going to take any sales professional if you're building meaningful relationships like we're attempting to do.
Cool.
I remember real quick. I remember sitting in your office, one of our first or second, coaching sessions together as you were mentoring me, and your specific words were, "Hey, you're going to find success. You're going to want it to happen in 6 months, and it's going to happen 2 or 3 years from now."
Right.
And it's not a matter of if it's going to happen; it's just when.
Right.
It's inevitable, right? But you were clear to me in one of our first or second meeting that it's going to take time, and if you can just see it through, you're going to be fine.
Yeah. So I guess in closing, it's great. Thank you for sharing that. I guess the kind of in wrap up mode, I will definitely vouch for you and say, in that first year, I don't want to say faking it till you make it, but this is where I think a lot of people get confused, because some of this has to do with just building habits. Like, you were showing up to the office every single day and the last to leave, even though there wasn't a lot on your plate, or sometimes anything on your plate, right? There was some dead space. There was some thumb twiddling. Now, you were really good about being intentional and doing some cold calling, and there's all that other stuff. And I think people get in their head, well, how could I be in the office that long? I don't really have anything to do. And it's like they're missing the forest for the trees. The point of that first year or two of showing up no matter what is you're building habits, good quality habits. And then what you do is you backfill in all the activity. And then it's like, well, I don't have any leads, I don't have any referrals, blah, blah, blah. Like there's always pushback that I experience with a lot of people who are younger in their career. And it's like, yeah, that's probably more of an excuse, because, Matt, you had a lot of success from cold calling on LinkedIn, right?
Yeah, some of my best relationships I have today, I reached out cold. and
Yeah.
I found something to connect on. And look, in any sales business, I talk to my dad often. He's like, "Hey, are you busy?" And it's like, or what's going on and stuff like that, right? It's like,
Yeah.
even if I have no loans, there's always something to be doing.
Yeah.
Always. If I'm bored or slow, I am not doing what I need to be doing, because there's
Yeah.
always something to do in this business. And so it does fascinate me when I hear there's nothing to do, or I don't have leads or something like that.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
yeah.
the only other thing I'd say, and we'll close this out, is eventually, as long as you continue to show up, as long as you continue to make these, if they have to be cold calls in the beginning, I took a title list of top producers in my area and started cold calling. Matt was doing a lot of LinkedIn cold calling. And then you're showing up to different industry specific events. We were doing open houses on the weekend. Like, there's a cumulative effect, just like the concept of compound interest over time. This is where it's like there's going to be a point 6 months to a year of putting all these little pieces in place where you're showing up every single day doing these things, where you're going to look back after about a year's time, and every day you wake up and you see your calendar is really full. And that doesn't even necessarily translate to commissions yet, but you've just kind of built momentum, and you're part of this networking group, you've got this coffee scheduled, you got that lunch appointment with somebody. It just kind of snowballs and takes on a life of its own, and things take care of themselves. So in closing, I would say for salespeople, everyone's so hyper focused on results. You have to, especially in the beginning stage of your career, be focused on activity, because the results eventually take care of themselves.
I love that, Jay. I would finish with one comment myself. If anybody's watching this in any commission-based sales capacity or role, and you need some mentorship, or you're looking to get some advice from two people who have been doing it for a long time, Jason, 20 years, me going on 15 years without, a salary, if you will,
Yeah.
reach out to both of us. We're both pretty willing to give our time, and certainly happy to have a phone call and help give whatever advice we can to help you reach success.
Yeah, well said. I know the pain and suffering and anxiety that one experiences feeling confused, feeling lost. And it's mentorship from somebody who's willing to give without expectations for something in return. That changed my life, that changed Matt's life. So that's always on table, whether you're a realtor, a loan officer, or any other 100% commission salesperson. You need some basic guidance. That's what we're here for sure. With that, we'll wrap it up. Hopefully you guys found this valuable. And I guess the only thing we'd ask for, if you did find value in this, please like and subscribe to this podcast. We'll keep the content coming. Thanks, guys.